coming down! Run!
The first sign was the sound. Not a boom. Not thunder. More like the sky itself tearing, high above the city, where the clouds should have been calm. People in the street stopped and looked up. A few raised phones right away. Others backed away, like they had learned that looking first was how you got hurt. Kitty Pryde was there because she was trying to be normal for one afternoon. A simple walk, a hood up, her hands in her pockets, but the crowd was already tense. A loud group was shouting at a smaller group. Mutant, freak, threat. The words hit like stones. Then the light opened. A bright split formed in the air, long and sharp, like a crack in glass. Wind pulled toward it. Bits of paper lifted off the street. A car alarm started screaming. Kitty felt her stomach drop. Not fear of heights. Fear of what came next. Two shapes fell out of the crack. One was a dark figure, narrow and fast, spinning once before it snapped straight like it had planned the fall. The other was bigger, brighter, and moving too fast to be a person. Kitty's eyes widened. "No way," she whispered. The bright one slammed down near a damaged overpass that had already been strained from the shouting crowd and the police line. The impact shook the ground. Metal groaned. A heavy section of the overpass began to tip. People screamed and ran. Before it could fall, the bright figure shot up. He moved like a blur. Not a teleport, not a jump. Flight. Clean and direct. He caught the entire falling section with both hands. The metal bent. Concrete cracked, but it did not drop. For a second, it was silent, like the street forgot how to breathe. Then he lifted it. Not slowly, not with strain and shaking knees. He lifted it like it was heavy, yes, but not impossible. He shoved it back into place, holding it steady while people stumbled away underneath. Kitty saw his face for the first time. Black hair, calm eyes, no mask. He looked like someone who belonged on a farm. Not in the sky. "Everyone move back," he said. His voice was steady. Not loud, but it carried. "You're safe. Just keep moving." Safe. It was a word Kitty almost didn't believe anymore. Across the street, the dark figure landed behind a police van. He did not crash. He did not stumble. He hit the ground like a shadow, becoming solid. Batman's eyes took in everything at once. Police positions, crowd angles, the nearest sniper perch, the nearest exit, the nearest person about to panic and run into the wrong place. His hand flicked. A small device rolled under the van. A soft pulse buzzed out. The police radios popped with static. Not destroyed, just quieted, just long enough. Two men in tactical gear lifted rifles toward the flying man. Batman moved. He was there. Then he wasn't. He came up behind the first shooter and struck the wrist. The gun fell. He hooked the man's arm and dropped him to the ground hard, but clean. Then he kicked the second rifle sideways, sending it skidding across the street. The men tried to shout. Batman's voice cut in, low and sharp. "Stand down," he said. "You're aiming at the wrong target." "Who the hell are you?" someone yelled. Batman didn't answer that. He never answered that. The flying man looked over, eyes narrowing for a moment. Not angry. Careful. Like he was checking if Batman was hurting anyone. Batman gave him the smallest nod. A signal. "I'm not your enemy." Yet. Kitty felt the air change. Fear didn't leave. It just shifted shape. Because people were staring at the flying man now with a different kind of panic. "Mutant," someone shouted. "No, that's not a mutant," another person snapped. That's something else." Kitty heard a familiar sound behind her. A sharp click of a visor. Cyclops stood on a rooftop with Storm beside him. Jean was there too. One hand pressed lightly to her temple like she was listening to a far-off voice. Cyclops spoke into a comm. "Professor, we have two unknown enhanced. One is flying. One is heavily armed." Storm's eyes followed the flying man as he set the overpass piece down gently, like placing a glass on a table. "He is trying to help," she said. Wolverine appeared on the rooftop edge like he had grown out of the stone. "Or he's trying to look like he's helping," he muttered. Jean's face tightened. "I can feel them," she said. One mind is bright, calm, like a steady flame. And the other? Cyclops asked. Jean swallowed. The other is locked. Not empty. Locked. Like a room with too many doors. Far away, in a quiet mansion, Charles Xavier's hands gripped the arms of his chair. His eyes went distant. Two minds, not like any he had met before. One felt like hope that refused to bend. The other felt like fear that had learned to fight. Xavier breathed out one sentence into the quiet room. Bring them home. The black jet arrived fast and low, silent until it was already above the street. Kitty phased through a wall to get closer without being seen. She didn't want to, but she needed to know. The flying man had already stopped people from getting crushed. That mattered. The jet's ramp dropped. Cyclops stepped forward first with Storm at his side. Jean stayed half a step behind, eyes still on the strangers. Wolverine dropped to the street like a stone and didn't bother with polite distance. Cyclops raised a hand. "We're not here to fight," he called. "We want to talk." The flying man floated down to street level, not as a show, as a way to meet them where they stood. "I'm glad to hear that," he said. He looked at the scared crowd and the armed line and the shouting. His jaw tightened. "This place is tense." "You have no idea," Wolverine said. Batman stayed in the shadow of the van, half hidden, watching the jet, watching the X-Men, watching the cameras on nearby buildings. Cyclops' gaze flicked to Batman. "You," he said. "Are you with him?" Batman did not answer right away. His head tilted, like he was listening to a sound only he could hear. The flying man answered instead. "He helped stop people from getting shot," he said. "So I hope he's with me." Batman stepped into better light, just enough for his symbol to be seen. The bat shape on his chest, the pointed cowl, the cape that made him look larger than he was. Several civilians gasped. Someone backed away and tripped over a curb. Storm's eyes narrowed. "A bat," she said softly. Wolverine's lips curled. "Great. We got ourselves a whole circus." Jean's focus slid to Batman for a fraction of a second, like she was testing a door. Batman's eyes snapped to her. Jean flinched and looked away, not because she was hurt, because she had met resistance. Cyclops' voice stayed firm. "We can't do this here," he said. "Too many people, too many guns, too much fear. Come with us, somewhere safe." The flying man looked around at the crowd. He made a choice fast. "Okay," he said, "but I'm not leaving until everyone here is calm." He took off again, straight up, fast enough to make the air pop. He hovered high above the street, where everyone could see him. His voice carried down, not with power, but with control. "Listen to me," he said. "Nobody needs to get hurt. Put down weapons. Step back. Let the scared people leave first." Some people listened. Some didn't. But then he did something that made the whole street go quiet. He flew to the side of the overpass and pressed a hand against a damaged support. Heat shimmered. Not fire. Not an explosion. A clean, thin red beam slid from his eyes, cutting and sealing damaged metal like a perfect tool. Kitty stared. "Heat vision," she whispered. Beast wasn't there to say the word, but Kitty could already imagine him saying it, excited and nervous at the same time. Superman fixed the danger in seconds. The overpass stopped groaning. Then he floated back down. "I can go now," he said. Cyclops' jaw tightened. He had seen big powers before, but this was different. This was not a mutant trick. This was not training. This was something like a force of nature choosing to be kind. Batman moved closer to the jet but kept his eyes on every roof. "You should have waited," he said to the flying man, quiet enough that only he would hear. "If I waited, someone dies," the flying man replied. Batman's mouth didn't change, but his eyes did. A small shift. Acknowledging the logic. Wolverine sniffed the air near Superman like he was smelling smoke. "You don't smell like one of us," he said. "So what are you?" The flying man hesitated, like he was deciding how much truth to give strangers with frightened eyes and fast hands. "My name is Clark," he said. "I'm not from here." Batman did not offer a name. He never did. The jet took them away before anyone could get a clean answer. Below, the crowd roared with questions. Above, cameras chased the black shape vanishing into the clouds. The mansion felt too calm at first. The jet landed behind tall trees. The air smelled like grass and cold stone. It looked like an old school, like a place meant for safety. Kitty followed at a distance, trying to read the strangers without being obvious. That was hard when one of them could probably hear her heartbeat from a mile away. They walked inside. Large halls, warm lights, old paintings. A school. Superman's eyes softened. "Kids live here?" he asked. "Yes," Xavier's voice said from the end of the hall. Charles Xavier rolled forward in his chair, calm and welcoming. Cyclops moved automatically to his side, like a guard even when he tried not to be. Xavier looked at Clark first. "Thank you," he said. "You saved lives today." Clark's shoulders eased slightly, like a weight had shifted. "I couldn't not," he said. Then Xavier turned his attention to Batman. Batman's posture stayed steady. His shoulders were square. His cape hung still. He did not look like he belonged in a bright hallway. He looked like he was visiting a place he had decided to protect, whether it liked him or not. "You carry many plans," Xavier said gently. Batman's chin lifted a fraction. "Plans keep people alive." Xavier nodded, like he understood that sentence too well. "Come," he said. "Let us speak somewhere private." They moved into a large room that felt like a lab and a library had become friends. Machines, screens, books, a big table. Beast waited there, hands clasped, eyes shining behind glasses. He was trying to look calm. He was failing in an adorable way. "Well," Beast said, stepping forward, "this is the most interesting afternoon I have had in quite some time." Wolverine snorted. "Yeah, sure, Blue. Don't drool." Beast ignored him. "If you allow it, I would like to run a few simple checks," he said to Clark. "No needles, no harm, just readings." Clark nodded. "If it helps you feel safe." Batman's head turned toward Beast. "You touch my gear, you lose your fingers," he said, flat and serious. Beast blinked. "Understood," he said quickly. "No fingers lost today." Kitty almost laughed. Almost. Cyclops leaned on the table edge. "We need answers," he said. "Who are you? Why are you here?" Clark took a breath. "I don't know why," he said. "I remember a kind of shock, like the air folded, then falling. Then I saw your city." Jean watched him closely. Her eyes narrowed like she could hear the truth in the spaces between words. "And you?" Cyclops asked Batman. Batman's voice was controlled. "Same event, different perspective." Storm crossed her arms. "Meaning?" "Meaning I saw a pattern in it," Batman said. "It wasn't random." Xavier's gaze sharpened. "You believe someone did this?" Batman did not say yes. He did not say no. He let silence do the work. Beast moved around Clark with a handheld scanner. It beeped softly. "Incredible," Beast murmured. "Your cells are structured in a way I have never seen. Solar energy absorption, dense tissue, yet stable." Clark glanced down. "So, I'm not a mutant, am I?" Beast hesitated, then answered honestly. "No," he said. "At least not by our definition." Wolverine's eyes narrowed. "So you're an alien?" Clark didn't flinch. "Yes," he said. The room changed again. Not with fear alone, with history. Kitty knew what alien meant to humans. It meant excuse. It meant permission to hate. Xavier's voice stayed calm. "What is your world like?" he asked. Clark gave it in clean beats, like he didn't want to overwhelm them. "There are heroes," he said. "There are villains. People get scared there too. But it's different. It's not built around fear of being born different." Jean's face tightened. That landed like a punch, even though it was not meant as one. Cyclops' voice was sharp. "And your powers?" he asked. Clark looked at his hands. "Strength?" he said. "Speed, flight, senses, heat vision. I try not to hurt people." Wolverine scoffed. "Try?" Clark met his gaze. I succeed, he said. Not bragging, just fact. Batman spoke before the tension could turn. He's not here to threaten you, he said. Everyone looked at Batman. He continued, voice calm. If he wanted to, you would already be dead. That's not what happened. Storm's eyes stayed on Batman. And what about you? She asked. What do you want? Batman's answer was the truth, but only part of it. To understand where we are, he said. To find a way home, and to make sure we don't cause damage while we're here. Jean's eyes narrowed again. You say we like you know him. Batman's mouth tightened. I don't, he said, but I've seen his type. He chooses people first. Xavier rolled forward slightly. I would like permission, he said gently, to touch your mind. Just enough to confirm you mean no harm. Batman's body did not move, but the air around him felt colder. No, Batman said. Cyclops bristled. If you want to stay in our home, Clark raised a hand. It's okay, he said to Cyclops. Then he looked at Xavier. You can touch mine, he said, lightly. Xavier nodded and reached out with his mind. Clark let the contact happen. He did not hide everything. He allowed Xavier to feel the shape of him. A farm, a mother's voice, a father's hands on a shoulder, a sense of duty like gravity, and a pain that was old and deep, but not bitter. Xavier pulled back softly, like he had touched something too heavy to hold long. He is good, Xavier said simply. Wolverine grunted. Good doesn't mean safe. Batman's gaze flicked to Wolverine. Neither does fear, he said. That line hung in the room. Beast cleared his throat and tried to lighten it. Well, he said, on the bright side, you are not radiating any toxin. You are not contagious, and you have not exploded yet. Kitty actually laughed that time. It slipped out. Clark turned toward her, surprised, and smiled. It was small, but it warmed the room. Batman did not smile. Jean's eyes slid toward Batman again. Curious. She tried a soft probe, not a push, just a hello. She hit a wall, not a wall like Xavier's gentle barrier. A wall like a fortress. Jean's expression tightened. She backed off. Batman noticed anyway. He always noticed. Telepath, he said, not accusing, labeling. Jean lifted her chin. Yes. Batman nodded once, like that was now filed away. Kitty could almost see it. An invisible folder opening in Batman's head, a note being written. Beast leaned in toward Kitty and whispered, He is absolutely making a list. Kitty whispered back, and he's going to hate that you can read it. Across the room, Batman's head turned slightly, like he heard them even without super hearing. Kitty froze. Batman's eyes met hers for a second. Then he looked away as if to say, I heard. I'm choosing not to care yet. Cyclops folded his arms. Here's the deal, he said. You can stay, but you follow our rules. You don't go out alone. You don't reveal our location. And you don't start fights. Clark nodded right away. Agreed. Batman's silence lasted longer. Xavier watched him with calm patience. Finally, Batman spoke. For now, he said. It wasn't a promise. It was a pause. Xavier accepted it like it was the best he could get. Then, for now, he said, you are under our roof. Outside, the world was already changing. News clips spread like wildfire. 2 new enhanced, one a god in blue, one a demon in black, both seen near a mutant conflict. In a neat office far away, a man with careful posture watched the footage and smiled without warmth. Boulevard Trask tapped the screen where Clark lifted the overpass. That, he said, is why we build Sentinels. In another place even farther, in a lab that smelled like clean metal and expensive soap, Mr. Sinister watched too. His eyes glinted, pleased like a child seeing a new toy. Not a mutant, Sinister whispered. Not human, not ours. He clasped his hands. Perfect. Back at the mansion, Xavier stood at a window as the sun lowered. He felt something in the air. Not wind, not weather. Attention. Something cold and organized had turned its gaze toward his home. And now, under his roof, there was a man who could lift mountains. and another man who would plan for the day mountains fell. The first strike came at night. Not midnight. Not the dead quiet hour. It came early, when students were still awake, when teachers were still moving, when the normal sounds of a home were still alive. That was not an accident. Cyclops heard the first warning from the sensors. A short beep, then another, then a rising string of alarms. Beast's voice came through the comm, tight. "We have multiple contacts approaching. Fast." Storm stepped into the hall and looked out a window. Lights moved in the sky. Not stars, not planes. Red eyes. "Sentinels," she said. Wolverine's claws slid out with a clean snikt. "Figures." Clark was already there, moving into the hall like he had been standing in the doorway the whole time. His face was calm, but his eyes had sharpened. Batman emerged from a shadow near a stairwell, cape hanging like a curtain. He had his belt on. Of course he did. Cyclops set his jaw. "Students to the safe rooms," he ordered. "Teacher's escort. No one panics. Go." Jean's hands lifted slightly, ready to build shields. "They're jamming something," she said. "There's a pressure in the air." Batman's gaze flicked to a small device he had placed earlier in the hall. He looked annoyed, like someone had touched his chessboard. "They're jamming communications," Batman said. "Short range, too." "How do you know?" Kitty asked, already moving, already phasing through a wall to get kids out. Batman didn't answer. He just reached under his cape and flipped a switch on a device. A low hum filled the hall. "Backup line," he said finally. "Hardwired." Beast's voice crackled again. "They're not just coming in from the front," he said. "They're surrounding the property." Cyclops' visor clicked into place. "X-Men, move." They hit the lawn like a wave. Sentinels dropped through the tree line, heavy and fast. Big purple-gray bodies, long arms, mechanical faces with glowing eyes. Their feet dented the ground. But something was different. These weren't lumbering machines that swung wide and hoped to hit. They moved with purpose. They spread out, taking positions, forming angles, trying to cut off escape paths. Batman noticed first. He always did. "They're adapting," he said, voice low. "They studied your usual patterns." Cyclops' optic blast hit the first sentinel in the chest and sent it sliding back through dirt. "Then we change patterns," he snapped. Storm lifted both hands. Wind rose hard. Rain began to slam down, cold and thick, turning the lawn slick. Lightning cracked, bright enough to make the sentinel's metal shine. Wolverine launched himself onto one machine's arm, claws digging. He climbed fast, like it was a tree. He drove his claws into a joint and tore. Sparks flew. Jean's telekinesis grabbed two sentinels mid-step and slammed them sideways into each other. Kitty phased through a third, reaching inside its chest for a control panel. Her hand met something she didn't expect. Heat. She yanked back, gasping. The panel was hot like a stove. "They're running hotter," she shouted. Beast sprang onto a sentinel's shoulder, agile and quick, and ripped a plate off to expose wires. "They're shielding internal systems," he called. "Anti-phasing measures." Clark watched all of it in one quick sweep. His eyes moved too fast to track. "Where are the students?" he asked. "Safe rooms," Cyclops said, firing again. "Unless they breach the mansion." Clark's jaw tightened. "They won't." He took off. Not a slow rise. A straight, fast rocket up through rain and lightning. The sentinel's eyes tracked him together like a school of fish turning at once. Several raised their arms. Beams fired up, not lasers like Cyclops. Wide, heavy energy pulses meant to hit big targets. Clark moved between them. To Cyclops' eyes, it looked like Clark vanished, then reappeared. A blur above the lawn, then near the trees, then above the mansion roof. Each time a beam fired toward the house, Clark was there first, taking it on his chest, redirecting it, or pushing it upward so it burst harmlessly in the clouds. Wolverine stared up for half a second. "Show off," he muttered, but there was no real hate in it. Batman wasn't watching Clark much. He was watching the sentinels. "They're not prioritizing him," Batman said suddenly. Cyclops fired again, cutting off a sentinel's hand. What? Batman pointed with a quick tilt of his chin. They're watching him, they're learning him, but their main pressure is on you, on your home. They want you desperate. Jean's eyes widened. They want us to make a mistake. A sentinel grabbed Kitty's ankle mid-phase. She yelped as the grip tightened. That should not have worked. Kitty went solid by instinct and kicked at the machine's wrist. "They're doing something to my timing," she shouted. Storm sent a gust that knocked the sentinel's head back, loosening its grip. Kitty phased out and rolled away, heart hammering. Beast shouted, "They are using a field that disrupts molecular control." Batman's eyes narrowed. "Anti-mutant tech," he said, "but built fast, too fast." Cyclops felt his throat tighten. Someone, somewhere, had planned this for years, and now it was evolving in days. Clark dropped back to the lawn, landing hard enough to crater dirt. "I can take them away from the mansion," he said. Cyclops shook his head. "No. If you leave, they'll breach the house." Batman spoke over Cyclops. "He doesn't mean leave," he said. Clark nodded once at Batman. Then he turned and looked at the biggest cluster of sentinels near the tree line. He inhaled. Then he exhaled hard. Super breath. It wasn't a cute trick. It was a force. The rain turned into a sideways sheet. Leaves ripped off branches. Several sentinels slid backward like someone had kicked the ground under them. Clark flew straight into the cluster and started moving them, not by punching until they exploded, by grabbing arms, twisting torsos, locking joints, and throwing them away from the mansion like tossing heavy furniture out of a burning room. He caught one sentinel by the waist and spun, using its own weight, then hurled it into an empty field beyond the trees. It hit the ground and dug a long trench. Cyclops watched and felt something he didn't like admitting. Relief. But it didn't last long. A different machine stepped forward. Smaller than the other sentinels, but denser. Its face was smoother. Its body had fewer seams. Its movements were quiet, like a cat made of metal. It looked at Clark. Then it moved. It shot forward so fast it made the grass ripple. It hit Clark in the chest with a heavy punch that sounded like a car crash. Clark slid back several feet, boots carving lines in the wet ground. He didn't fall. He looked down at the machine's fist, then back up at its face. "That was new," he said, calm but focused. The machine's eyes flashed. It spoke in a flat voice. "Anomaly confirmed." Batman's gaze hardened. "Prime unit," he said. "Or something close." Cyclops fired a full blast. The beam hit the prime unit square in the torso. The unit skidded, but it didn't blow apart. It dug its feet in and stopped. Cyclops' stomach sank. "Okay," he muttered. "That's a problem." Jean pushed with telekinesis, trying to crush it, bend it, lock it. The unit's body shifted in small ways that resisted, not like raw strength, like it was adjusting its structure. "It's learning," Jean said through clenched teeth. The prime unit turned its head toward Jean, a pulse emitted from its face, not an attack on her body. On her mind. Jean flinched, eyes squeezing shut. For a second she felt like someone had shoved static into her thoughts. "What did it do?" Storm demanded. Beast's eyes went wide as he scanned with a handheld device. "It released a neurodisruptor," he said. "It is targeting telepaths now." Batman's voice was cold. "It's building a map of you." Clark moved toward the prime unit again. This time he didn't try to throw it. He tried to end it. He hit it with a tight, controlled punch that would have cracked a mountain of stone. The unit flew back and slammed into a tree line. Trees snapped, dirt sprayed. The unit rose. Its chest was dented, but it was still standing. Clark's eyes narrowed. "Okay," he said again. "So you're built to take hits." The prime unit lifted an arm. A beam fired, wide and blue-white, not aimed at Clark. It aimed at the mansion. Clark moved to intercept, but the beam split mid-air into 3 beams. One continued to the mansion. One swept toward the safe room area under the house. One cut toward a nearby road where a car had stopped, full of civilians who had not gotten far enough away. Clark's head snapped toward the car. Batman saw the split too. "It's forcing a choice," Batman said. Cyclops didn't wait. He shouted into the comm, "Kitty, evacuate the safe room nearest the west side, now." Kitty's voice came back, breathless. "I'm already moving." Storm threw up a wall of wind to deflect the beam aimed at the road. It slowed, but it didn't stop. The energy burned through rain. Jean pushed a telekinetic shield in front of the mansion beam. The shield cracked like glass under pressure. Clark moved. He became a blur. He hit the road beam first, taking it on his shoulder and twisting his body to angle it upward. It burned, but it did not pierce. He grunted once, more annoyed than hurt. Then he shot toward the mansion beam and shoved Jean's shield into stronger shape by pushing the air itself, strengthening her angle with his own body as a brace. "Hold it," he called. Jean's eyes widened. She felt him like a steady anchor. "I'm holding." The safe room beam was still cutting in. Batman's eyes narrowed. He threw 3 small discs into the air. They snapped open into a tight net of reflective material. The beam hit the net, scattered, and weakened. Not stopped, but weakened enough. A figure blurred out of the trees and slammed down in front of the weakened beam like a wall of iron. Magneto. His cape flared. His helmet gleamed even in rain. Metal from the ground rose around him, forming a shield. The beam struck the metal and spread out harmlessly. Wolverine's growl came from the side. "Of course," he muttered. Magneto didn't look at Wolverine. He looked at Clark. His eyes traveled up and down Clark's body like he was reading a weapons label. "You are not one of them," Magneto said, voice carrying. Clark held the beam back with his body still braced near Jean's shield. Then finally, the Prime unit cut the attack and stepped back. Clark floated down, landing in the mud, face calm but serious. "I'm not," he said. "But I'm not with them either." Magneto's mouth tightened. "We shall see." The Prime unit's head turned slightly toward Magneto, then toward Batman, then toward Jean, then toward Clark again. Like a camera taking pictures, Batman felt a cold line move down his spine. "It's not here to win," he thought. "It's here to learn." Cyclops fired again and again, pushing the Prime unit back. Storm's lightning struck its shoulders. Beast tossed an explosive gel bomb onto its knee joint. Wolverine carved at the wiring Beast exposed. The unit took it all, adjusted, and then did something that made everyone freeze. It stepped backward into the shadows of the trees. And it didn't just run. It vanished behind a field shimmer. A clean retreat. A tactical retreat. Batman ran toward the tree line, but by the time he reached it, the unit was gone. Clark hovered above, scanning with his eyes, then with his hearing. His gaze moved across miles in seconds. "I can't find it," he said. Beast's fur bristled. "It is masking its signature," he said, "with technology we did not have last year." Cyclops' chest heaved as the remaining Sentinels, without their leader, pulled back in a wide, organized withdrawal. They moved like they were following a plan, not fear. Storm lowered her hands, rain slowing. Wolverine's claws slid back in. "They got what they came for," he said, angry. Jean pressed fingers to her temple. "They looked at me," she whispered. It felt like being measured. Batman stood in the mud, staring at the broken tree line, eyes hard. "They didn't just scan you," he said. "They scanned him." His gaze flicked to Clark. Clark's face was still calm, but his eyes were darker now. "What did they take?" he asked. Batman answered without softness. "Data," he said. "And time." Magneto stepped closer, water running off his cape. "Your presence changes the board," he said to Clark. "They will build bigger cages now." Clark looked at him. "Steady. Then we break them," he said. Magneto's eyes narrowed. "Or we burn the hands that build them." Cyclops stepped between them, voice tight. "Not tonight," he said. "We protect our people first." Behind them, in the mansion, frightened students listened to the fading sounds of battle and realized something new. The world had already been hunting them. But now the world had seen a man who could stop a bridge with his hands, and a shadow who could plan a war without raising his voice. And somewhere out there, a machine that learned was carrying a perfect picture of both. By morning, the lawn was covered in broken branches and deep tracks in the mud. The rain had stopped, but the fear did not. Scott Summers stood at the big window in the mansion's main hall and watched students move in lines like quiet ants. They held hands, they carried blankets. Some looked like they had not slept at all. He told himself the same thing again and again. No one died. That should have been enough to feel relief. But the machines had not come to win. They had come to learn. Scott could feel it in the way they pulled back, like a boxer stepping away after landing a clean look at your guard. Behind him, Hank McCoy's voice carried across the room, fast and worried. They altered their internal shielding mid-fight. That should not be possible at that speed. Ororo stood near the stairs, arms folded, eyes steady. "It is possible," she said, "if someone planned for this." Logan leaned against the wall like he lived there. "Someone always plans for this," he muttered. On a couch that looked too soft for him, the man called Clark sat with his elbows on his knees. His hands were clasped so tight the knuckles looked pale. He stared at the floor, not because he was ashamed, but because he was thinking hard. The man in black stood in a corner where the light did not reach him well. He did not sit. He did not relax. He looked like he was waiting for the next wave. Professor Xavier rolled into the room with the calm face he used when children were watching. Scott could see the tiredness in his eyes anyway. "Report," Xavier said, gentle but firm. Hank stepped forward with a tablet full of readings. They used radio jammers, internal heat shielding, and a field that disrupted Kitty's phasing, he said. And the prime unit, Hank swallowed. It reacted to telepathic contact. It pushed back. Jean Grey stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame. She looked fine until you watched her eyes. Then you saw it. The small flinch every time a loud sound happened. The way her mind was still bracing. "It wasn't a mind," Jean said softly. "But it felt like a cold hand on my thoughts. Like something learning where I keep my door." Xavier nodded once. "And our guests?" Scott watched Clark lift his head. The man's face was open. That made it harder. It would have been easier if he looked smug or cruel. Clark spoke first. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't bring them here on purpose. But I think my existence makes things worse." "No," Ororo said at once. Her voice had the tone she used when someone tried to blame themselves for a storm. "They were coming for us long before you arrived." Logan's mouth twisted. "Yeah," he said. "But now they've got a new toy to build cages for." The man in black finally moved. He stepped closer, slow enough that nobody felt rushed, but fast enough that Scott noticed how smooth his control was. "The prime unit tracked him," the man in black said. "And it tracked you. And it tracked your home. It left with data." Hank frowned. "How can you be sure it left with anything at all?" The man in black looked at Hank like the question was reasonable but late. "Because it stopped trying to kill you," he said, "and started trying to force choices. That's not a kill plan, that's a test." Scott felt his jaw clench. "So what now?" he asked. The man in black's gaze went to the hallway where students passed by with teachers. "Now you assume they will come back smarter," he said. "And you decide what you're willing to do before they make you decide in the moment." Clark pushed to his feet. "We should go to them," he said. "Find their base. Stop them before they upgrade again." Scott wanted to agree. He also heard the other voice in his head, the voice that had kept his team alive for years. "If you leave the kids, you lose." Xavier spoke before Scott could. "We do not abandon our home," he said. "Not for vengeance, not for fear." Clark's eyes softened. "It's not vengeance," he said quickly. "It's prevention." Ororo stepped closer. "And prevention without care becomes punishment," she said. "We have learned that lesson already." The man in black said nothing, but Scott could feel his agreement with Ororo in the way he stood, like someone who didn't like the words, but couldn't deny the truth. That afternoon, the world outside the mansion did what it always did after fear. It talked. 100 news clips ran on repeat. The flying stranger lifting the overpass, the black shape dropping men without killing them, the lights in the sky above the school. A host on television said, "If mutants can hide this kind of power, what else are they hiding?" Another said, This isn't about mutants anymore. This is about invasion. Outside the gates, a small crowd formed. Some held signs that said, "Protect mutant children." Others held signs that said, "Shut it down." Scott stayed near the front hall with his visor on. Not because he expected to fire, but because the visor made people listen to his words more. Clark stood beside him with his hands open, palms visible, like he was always trying to look safe. Jean stayed back with Xavier, quietly scanning the crowd, not reading thoughts deeply, just listening for sudden spikes of danger. The man in black vanished somewhere inside the building. Scott noticed. Scott always noticed. He found him later in a side room near the library. The lights were off. A single screen glowed. There were files on it, headings, diagrams, clean lines, notes. Scott's stomach tightened. The man in black didn't turn when Scott entered. "Don't worry," he said. "This isn't about taking control." Scott took one step closer. "It looks like a list," he said. "It is," the man replied. "A safety list." Scott leaned forward and read a few lines. Storm. Large-scale weather manipulation. Range unknown. Emotional triggers likely. Cyclops. Focused energy projection. Line of sight. Visor tech is single point of failure. Jean Grey. Telepath. Telekinetic. High threat ceiling. Mental contact risk. Kitty Pryde. Molecular phasing. Rescue threat. Infiltration risk. Wolverine. Regeneration. Close quarters lethal. Scott's hands curled into fists. "You're making contingencies on children," he said. The man in black finally turned. His eyes were steady. "I'm making contingencies on power," he said. "Power doesn't care if it's in an adult or a child when something goes wrong." Scott's voice sharpened. "You don't get to do this in our home." "Then don't invite strangers into your home," the man in black replied without cruelty. "Just fact." Scott opened his mouth. Jean's voice came from the doorway. "You know I can hear the intent," she said. Scott turned. John stood there, arms folded, not angry like Logan, not strict like Scott, just hurt in a quiet way. The man in black didn't flinch. "You shouldn't be listening," he said. Jean stepped inside anyway. "We don't have a choice sometimes," she said. "People like me don't get to choose what touches us." The man in black's jaw tightened slightly. It was the closest thing to an apology Scott had seen from him. "I'm not doing this to threaten you," he said. Jean looked at the screen again. "Then why does it feel like a cage?" she asked. He stared at her for a long moment, like he was deciding whether honesty was safe. "Because cages exist," he said finally. "And I've seen what happens when people pretend they don't." Hank's voice suddenly called from the hallway, bright with forced cheer. "Ah, there you are. I took the liberty of adding formatting suggestions to your headings." Scott blinked. "What?" Hank stepped in with a stack of papers. He smiled like a guilty teacher. "Your file titles lack consistency," he said to the man in black. "Some are written as nouns, some as verbs. It is upsetting." Jean let out a small laugh before she could stop herself. It was a quick sound, like a crack in a wall. The man in black stared at Hank. "You edited my files," he said. Hank raised a finger. "Only the headings," he said, "and I corrected a spelling mistake." Scott almost smiled. Almost. The man in black didn't smile at all, but he did something close to it. He closed the screen. "Talk to Xavier," Scott said, voice hard again. "If you want to stay here, you can't build fear inside our walls." The man in black nodded once. "I'll lock them down," he said. "No one but me." Jean's eyes narrowed. "That doesn't solve the trust issue," she said. "No," he agreed. "It doesn't." That night, Xavier met Clark alone in his office. The room smelled like books and old wood, the kind of safe smell that came from time. Clark stood near the window, looking out at the dark trees. "They hate us," he said quietly. "They hate you. And I just arrived, and now they hate you louder." Xavier rolled closer. "They hated us loudly before you," he said. "But you bring something new." Clark turned. "What?" he asked. Xavier held his gaze. "Hope," Xavier said, "and also a new fear. Clark's shoulders lowered. "I don't want to be a symbol," he said. "I just want to help." Xavier nodded. "I understand," he said. "But symbols happen whether we want them or not." Clark hesitated. "You read my mind," he said. "Lightly," Xavier replied. Clark swallowed. "Then you know I'm not lying." "I do," Xavier said. "That is why I invited you in." Clark looked down at his hands. "Back home, people looked up when I arrived," he said. "Here, people look up because they think the sky is falling." Xavier's voice softened. "Our children live under that sky every day," he said. "If your presence makes the storm louder, then your choices must be even more careful." Clark nodded slowly. "Then tell me what to do," he said. Xavier didn't command him. He never did. He simply said, "Stay near our students, let them see what steady strength looks like." Clark breathed out. "I can do that," he said. Across the world, in a clean lab with white walls and bright lights, Mr. Sinister watched a different screen. The footage of the flying man was paused at the moment his eyes glowed red. Sinister's lips curved. "Solar," he whispered. "Absorption, dense structure, self-control." He turned to a man in a suit who stood nervously beside him. "Have the Sentinel people deliver their data," Sinister said politely, as if he was asking for tea. "Tell them it will help their public safety." The man swallowed. "And what about the other one?" he asked. Sinister's eyes gleamed. "Ah," he said. "The one with the walls." Sinister tapped another screen. It showed the man in black moving through the street, disarming guns with clean speed. "He thinks like a surgeon," Sinister said. "He cuts out threats. He plans ahead. He will be more difficult." The suited man tried to smile. "So what do we do?" he asked. Sinister clasped his hands. "We do not fight them head-on," he said. "We do not need to. We simply make them choose the wrong thing." Back at the mansion, Logan found Clark on the training lawn the next morning. Clark was lifting broken stone slabs and stacking them neatly, not because he needed exercise, because he needed to do something with his hands that did not involve hurting anyone. Logan walked up and stopped close enough to smell the air. "You're too calm," Logan said. Clark set a slab down carefully. "I'm not calm," he said. "I'm controlled." Logan grunted. "Same lie different guys tell," he said. Clark looked at him. "I don't lie about this," he said. Logan stepped closer, eyes sharp. "You've got power like a bomb," he said. "You ever get bored?" Clark blinked. "Bored?" he repeated. Logan's mouth twisted. "Bored of being good," he said. "Bored of saving people who spit at you." Clark's eyes went distant for a second. He thought of his own world, his own critics, his own losses. Then he looked back at Logan. "If I get bored," he said, "then I go talk to someone who reminds me why I'm not allowed to be bored." Logan's eyebrows lifted. "Like who?" he asked. Clark smiled, small and real. "A kid," he said. Logan stared at him for a moment longer, like he was testing the truth by pressure alone. Then Logan looked away. He said. "We'll see how long that lasts." That afternoon, Magneto appeared at the edge of the mansion property. He didn't march in. He didn't attack. He stood by the trees like a king waiting to be invited. Storm went out first. Scott followed. Logan stayed nearby because Logan always stayed nearby. Clark walked with them because he refused to hide. Magneto's eyes tracked Clark again with the same careful measuring look. "You are not a mutant," Magneto said. Clark didn't deny it. "No," he said. "And yet you choose to stand with them," Magneto continued, gesturing toward the mansion. "I stand with people," Clark said, "not labels." Magneto's mouth tightened. "Labels are how they kill us," he said. "They call us threat and pretend that makes it true." Scott's voice was clipped. "What do you want?" he asked. Magneto looked at Scott like Scott was a child who didn't understand chess. "I want you to wake up," Magneto said. "The world is building machines. It will build more now that it has seen him." Clark held Magneto's gaze. "Then we stop the machines," Clark said. Magneto shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "You stop the hands. Clark's voice stayed calm. "I don't break people to teach them fear," he said. Magneto's eyes narrowed. "Then you will keep losing," he said. Clark didn't move. "I don't measure winning the way you do," he replied. Magneto's gaze slid past Clark to the mansion windows, where frightened students watched from behind curtains. His expression shifted for a fraction of a second, something old and sad. Then it was gone. "This world will test you," Magneto said to Clark. "It will ask you to choose between control and chaos." Clark's jaw tightened. "And I will choose freedom," he said. Magneto's cape turned with the wind. "Freedom without force is a prayer," he said. Then Magneto stepped back into the trees and vanished like he had never been there. That same evening, the mansion felt too quiet again. Kitty walked the halls, checking doors like she always did now. She passed by the student rooms. She heard whispers. She heard sobs. She also heard laughter from one room. A group of younger kids were gathered around Clark. He sat on the floor because it made him less scary. He held a broken model airplane that one child had found outside after the battle. "I can fix it," Clark said. "You can fix everything," a kid said with wide eyes. Clark shook his head. "No," he said gently. "I can't." The kid frowned. "Why not?" he asked. Clark looked at the plane and chose his words carefully. "Because some things aren't broken like metal," he said. "Some things are broken like trust. And that takes time." Kitty felt her throat tighten. She backed away quietly and let them have that moment. Then she reached her own room and froze. Her bed was made, her books were stacked neatly, and her drawer was open. The drawer where she kept a small photo of her family and a letter from her mom. Kitty's heart hammered. She searched the room fast. Nothing was missing. Nothing was moved except that drawer. And then she saw it. A single piece of paper on her pillow. It was plain. No logo, no threat symbol, no drama. Just a sentence written in neat, calm handwriting. "Bring the alien to me." Kitty's hands shook as she ran. When she reached Xavier's office, Scott and Jean were already there. The man in black stood near the wall, eyes locked on the paper. Clark stepped in behind Kitty and saw the note in Scott's hand. He didn't need super hearing to understand the words. His face went still. The calm look didn't vanish. It hardened. "Someone took a student," Scott said, voice tight, quietly, no alarms. Jean's eyes were glassy. "I didn't feel it," she whispered. "I didn't feel it at all." Xavier's face remained calm, but his voice turned sharper than Kitty had ever heard it. "That means it was planned," Xavier said, "and shielded." The man in black spoke one sentence, low and certain. "This is bait," he said, "and it's aimed at him." Clark's eyes stayed on the note. "Then we go," he said. Scott stepped forward. "We go smart," he said. And for the first time, the room felt like it agreed on one thing. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a hunt. 2 days later, the mansion was running on a new rhythm. Not peaceful. Not normal. Just controlled. Scott pushed training drills harder. Ororo kept weather calm above the property like a quiet promise. Hank rebuilt sensors and alarms. Jean tried to rest, but her mind kept searching for the missing student like a hand feeling for a lost key. Clark stayed close to the kids as Xavier asked. He helped carry things. He fixed broken doors. He stood outside the safe rooms during nighttime drills so students could see him and breathe easier. The man in black did something else. He built a net. It wasn't a cage. Not on purpose, but it looked like one if you hated being watched. Small sensors hidden in trees, quiet cameras tucked under roof edges, a line of devices that ran on wires instead of signals, so jammers would have a harder time. Kitty found one near her window and crossed her arms. "Are you serious?" she asked. The man in black didn't look up from the device in his hand. "Yes," he said. "That's creepy," Kitty said. "It's coverage," he replied. Jean appeared behind Kitty, eyes narrowed. "You know I can still hear intent," she said. He finally looked at her. "And you know I'm still not okay with that," he said. Jean's mouth twitched. "Fair," she admitted. Hank stepped into the hall carrying a clipboard and sighed loudly. "I have again corrected your headings," he announced. The man in black stared at him. Hank held up the clipboard like a proud teacher. "I changed potential threat level to risk notes because you were upsetting the children when they read your screen upside down." Kitty blinked. "They read his screen?" she asked. Hank shrugged. "They are children," he said. "Children read forbidden things. It is their hobby." The man in black's jaw tightened. He said nothing. Clark walked up, hearing only the last line. "Children have hobbies?" he asked, half amused, half worried. Kitty pointed at the man in black. "His hobby is paranoia," she said. The man in black turned and walked away without a word. Clark watched him go. "He's scared," Clark said softly. Kitty snorted. "He's terrifying," she replied. "Both can be true," Clark said. That night, Scott sat with Clark in the war room Hank had set up near the lab. Maps were spread across a table. Notes were pinned to boards. Scott tapped the missing student's name on a file. "Whoever did this got past everything," he said. "They didn't trigger sensors. They didn't leave signs." Clark leaned forward, face serious. "Then we find signs anyway," he said. Scott's eyes narrowed. "How?" he asked. Clark looked up. "I can hear and see far," he said. "But whoever did this knows how minds work. They know how to hide." Scott's throat tightened. "Jean blames herself," he admitted. Clark's eyes softened. "It's not her fault," he said. Scott gave a humorless laugh. "Try telling her that," he said. Clark's gaze moved to the window, where the sky was clear. "The tear that brought us here," he said quietly. It left an echo. Scott frowned. "An echo?" he repeated. Clark nodded. "A pattern," he said. "Like when lightning hits and the air smells different after. I've been scanning the sky, the stars, the upper air. There's a weak line that doesn't belong." Scott watched him. "So you think you can find the place where you fell through?" he said. Clark hesitated. "Maybe not the exact spot," he said. "But I can find where someone is copying that kind of energy." Scott's eyes narrowed. "And you think someone is?" he asked. Clark didn't answer right away. Because if he said yes out loud, it became real. "Yes," he said finally. Down in the sublevel, the man in black was not scanning the sky. He was scanning people, not in a cruel way, in a careful way. He had found the only thing that always betrayed a plan. Money. He stood on a rooftop in a nearby city, raincoat over his suit, cape hidden. He watched a warehouse by the docks where trucks arrived at odd hours. A man stepped out and handed a case to another man. No handshake, no smiles, just the quick exchange of something expensive. The man in black's eyes narrowed. He moved. He dropped behind the warehouse without a sound. He slid through a side door after disabling the lock in 2 seconds. Inside, the air smelled like oil and salt and cheap metal. He followed the voices. 2 men argued. "I told you, it's not just mutant stuff," one hissed. "It's off-world." "Off-world doesn't pay," the other replied. "Sinister pays." The man in black froze. He didn't like that name, even though he didn't know it yet. Something about the way they said it made his skin crawl. He stepped out of the shadow and grabbed the first man by the collar before the man could scream. He slammed him into a wall and held him there, feet off the ground. "Who pays?" the man in black asked. The man's eyes bulged. I don't know, just a broker." The man in black's voice didn't rise. "Try again," he said. The second man reached for a gun. The man in black threw a small blade that pinned the gun hand to a crate. The man screamed. "Who?" the man in black repeated. "Pays." The first man gasped. "Sinister," he choked. "A lab guy. Fancy. Smiles too much." The man in black's grip tightened. "Where?" he demanded. The man shook. "Not here," he said. "A place inland. Old facility. They call it the Orchard." The man in black's eyes narrowed. "Why do you call it that?" he asked. The man swallowed. "Because they grow things," he whispered. The man in black let him drop. Not gently, but alive. He stepped back into shadow, vanished, and left both men shaking on the warehouse floor. He didn't report everything right away. He went to confirm it first. Because he trusted proof more than people. At the same time, high above the mansion, Clark floated in the cold air, eyes fixed on a faint line in the sky that nobody else could see. It was like a scar. Not bright, not loud, just wrong. He followed it across miles, over forests and roads, toward a quiet patch of land with an old facility sitting like a sleeping animal. Clark's jaw tightened. He could hear nothing inside. No voices. No heartbeats. That was the first red flag. Even empty buildings had rodents. Even quiet land had birds. This place was too clean. He descended slowly, landing behind a line of dead trees. He walked forward like a man entering a church, careful not to disturb what he didn't understand yet. His eyes moved over the facility. Fences, cameras, no guards. Second red flag. Guardless places were either abandoned or confident. Clark heard a soft sound behind him. A footstep so quiet most people wouldn't notice it. He turned. The man in black stood there, cape hanging still. "You found it too," Clark said. The man in black nodded once. "Someone mentioned an orchard," he said. Clark's eyes narrowed. "That fits," he said. They didn't argue about who led. They moved together. Inside the facility, the air was cold. Not natural cold. Engineered cold. Lights flickered on as they passed, one by one, like the building woke to watch them. Clark's vision cut through walls. He saw long halls, metal doors, empty rooms. Then he saw it. A room with heat sources. Not many, just enough. Clark's face hardened. "There are people," he whispered. The man in black's head tilted. "How many?" he asked. Clark listened. "More than 10, he said. But some, their heartbeats are too slow. Drugged." The man in black's hand moved toward his belt. "Traps?" he asked. Clark's gaze swept. "Yes," he said. "And something else." He paused. He didn't want to say it. Saying it made it real. "Light," Clark said. "Red light." The man in black looked at him. "That matters?" he asked. Clark's jaw tightened. "It might," he said. They reached a heavy door. The man in black placed a device on it, listened to a tiny hum, then pulled it back. "Laser grid," he said. "Pressure sensors." Clark frowned. "I can go through," he said. "No," the man in black replied immediately. "Not without knowing what triggers what. You go through. The hostages die." Clark's hands curled. He forced them open again. "Then what?" he asked. The man in black looked at the ceiling corner. "Cameras," he said. "Let them see you." Clark didn't like being used like a symbol, but he understood strategy. He stepped into the open. He let the cameras get a clean view of him. Then he spoke, voice steady, loud enough to carry through halls. "I'm here," he said. "Let the kids go." A smooth voice answered from unseen speakers. "Ah," it said, warm and pleased. "You came. Of course you did." The man in black's eyes narrowed. He hated voices that sounded happy while doing evil things. "I prefer not to waste time," the voice continued. "Step forward, my bright stranger, and bring your shadow friend as well. I have so many questions." Clark's gaze hardened. "Show me the student you took," he demanded. The speaker gave a soft laugh. "Oh, I will," the voice said. "But first, walk." The man in black leaned close to Clark. "Don't," he whispered. Clark whispered back, "We can't leave them." The man in black's jaw tightened. "We don't have to obey," he said. "We can take control." Clark looked at the door again. "Not if they wired the captives," he said. The man in black's eyes flicked. He knew Clark was right. So he did what he always did. He made a third option. He pulled a tiny drone from his belt and released it. It buzzed up into a ceiling vent and vanished. Clark's eyes widened a fraction. "You brought that?" he whispered. "I bring plans," the man in black said. The voice in the speaker purred. "How adorable," it said, as if it had seen the drone anyway. "But yes, walk, or the orchard loses its fruit." Clark's teeth clenched. He took a step. The red lights overhead brightened. Clark felt it at once. Not pain. Not weakness like he couldn't move. More like the world got heavier. His hearing dulled. His vision lost sharpness at the edges. His skin still felt strong, but his usual easy control was harder, like moving through thicker air. His breathing stayed steady. He would not show fear. The man in black noticed immediately. "Red," he said under his breath. Clark nodded once without looking at him. "Keep your distance," Clark whispered. "If I'm slower, you'll need to be faster." The man in black's eyes hardened. "I'm always faster," he said. They walked into a wide lab space. Glass tanks lined the walls. Metal tables. Bright, clean floors that felt wrong for a place full of cages. And there were cages. Kids and teens. Some unconscious, some awake and silent. One of them was the missing student, eyes wide, face pale. Scott's student. A wave of anger moved through Clark so fast it almost broke his control. He forced it down, because anger without plan would kill the people he came to save. A man stepped out from behind a glass wall. Mr. Sinister. He looked like he had dressed for a party, not a crime. He smiled like a teacher about to praise a good answer. "Welcome," Sinister said. "You are even more beautiful up close." Clark took one step forward. "Let them go," he said. Sinister's smile didn't change. "You can't order me," he replied, "but you can bargain." The man in black moved sideways, eyes scanning exits, cameras, vents. "You took a child to lure an alien," he said. "That tells me you're not brave. You're careful." Sinister's eyes slid to him. "And you?" he said softly. "You are the more interesting one. A human wrapped in fear and discipline. You build lists, don't you?" The man in black didn't react outwardly. Inside, a cold line formed. How did he know? Jean's voice echoed in his memory. "You know, I can hear intent." Sinister's smile widened, as if he tasted the thought. "Oh, don't worry," Sinister said. "I am not a telepath. I'm just observant." Clark's voice turned sharper. "You're wasting time," he said. Sinister lifted a finger. A screen behind him lit up. It showed the mansion from above. It showed lines around it, little blinking dots. Clark's stomach tightened. "What is that?" he asked. "Insurance," Sinister said pleasantly. "If you attempt to smash everything, the orchard burns. If you attempt to take me, the orchard burns. If you attempt to be heroic in the simple way, the orchard burns." The man in black's eyes narrowed. "Those dots are explosives," he said. Sinister nodded like he was agreeing about the weather. "Small," he said. "Precise. Enough to kill cages. Enough to kill children." Clark's hands curled again. He forced them open. He took a slow breath. "What do you want?" Clark asked. Sinister stepped closer to the glass, eyes bright. "I want to understand you," he said. "I want a sample, a scan, a conversation." "And then you'll let them go?" Clark asked. Sinister tilted his head. "Perhaps," he said, "if you are cooperative." The man in black moved a fraction. "He won't," he said. Sinister's gaze snapped to him. "He will," Sinister replied calmly. "Because he is good. Good people are easy to steer. You know that better than anyone." Clark's eyes flicked to the missing student. The student's lips moved without sound. "Help." Clark's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Above them, in the ceiling vent, the man in black's tiny drone moved closer, sending a live feed to a device hidden in his glove. The drone showed wires running under the floor to the cages. It also showed something else. A back corridor with a door labeled in neat writing. Control. The man in black didn't speak right away. He waited for the exact second when Sinister's attention was fully on Clark. Then he moved. He tossed a smoke pellet not toward Sinister, but toward the cameras. The smoke wasn't thick. It wasn't meant to hide everything. It was meant to blind the machine eyes for 2 seconds. Clark understood at once. He moved too. Even under the heavy red lights, he was still faster than almost anyone in this world. Not his best, but still impossible. He shot sideways, not at Sinister, but at the cage wiring. His heat vision flared, thin and precise. He cut wires without touching the children. Sparks burst. Alarms began to wail. Sinister's smile finally cracked. "No," he hissed, sharp for the first time. The man in black was already sprinting down the back corridor. He hit the control door, disabled it, and slipped inside. A room full of monitors and a main trigger system. He didn't hesitate. He pulled out a small device and slapped it onto the main board. A pulse hit. Screens flickered. The trigger system froze. In the lab, Sinister raised a hand and pressed a button on a remote. Nothing happened. His eyes widened. "Impossible," he whispered. Clark moved between Sinister and the cages like a wall. "You don't get to press that again," Clark said. Sinister's smile returned, thinner now. "Oh, you are delightful," he said, "truly. But you do realize you are slower under my lights." Clark's eyes narrowed. "And you do realize," Clark replied, "I'm still me." Sinister snapped his fingers. From side doors, figures stepped out. Not sentinels. People. Mutants with blank eyes. Drugged. Controlled. Each one wearing a collar that pulsed faintly. Wolverine's voice echoed in Clark's memory from earlier. "They grow things." Sinister's voice turned gentle again. "I do not like fighting," he said, "but I do like watching heroes suffer." One of the controlled mutants charged Clark with a flaming fist. Clark didn't punch back. He grabbed the mutant's arm, redirected the momentum, and gently slammed the mutant into the floor hard enough to stop movement, but not hard enough to break bones. Clark's face was tight with focus. "I'm not your enemy," he said to the controlled mutant, even though the mutant couldn't hear him well. Another mutant fired an energy beam. Clark moved to block it with his shoulder so it wouldn't hit the cages. A third mutant tried to stab him with a metal spike. Clark caught the spike and bent it into a harmless curve. He fought like a man holding a crying child in one arm and a shield in the other, always choosing the angle that kept the captive safe. Sinister watched with bright eyes, like he was watching art. The man in black returned from the control room at a run. "Trigger is dead," he said to Clark. "For now." Sinister clicked his tongue. "For now," he echoed, amused. The man in black threw 3 small discs that snapped open into binding bands around the controlled mutant's ankles and wrists. They fell and struggled. Clark moved fast to pull collars off the nearest captive, tearing them apart with careful pressure. Sinister stepped backward, slow and graceful. He reached a wall panel and pressed his palm to it. A hidden door slid open behind him. Clark lunged, and the red lights above flared brighter. For one heartbeat, Clark's body felt heavier again. Not helpless, just delayed. One heartbeat was enough. Sinister slipped through the door. It sealed behind him. Clark slammed a fist into the metal. The wall dented, the building shook, but he stopped before it collapsed. Because the kids were still here. He turned back at once. "Get them out," he said. The man in black didn't need to be told twice. He moved cage to cage, unlocking, cutting, guiding. Clark lifted the heavy cage doors like they were cardboard. The missing student stumbled out and fell into Kitty's arms when she phased in through a side wall, with Scott and Aurora behind her. Scott's eyes burned with rage and relief all at once as he grabbed the student's shoulders. "You're okay," he said, voice shaking. "You're okay." Aurora's gaze swept the lab. The collars, the drugged captives, the clean walls. Her jaw tightened. "This place is a grave with lights," she said. Jean stepped in last, face pale. She looked at the controlled mutants, then at Clark. "You didn't hurt them," she whispered. Clark's voice was rough. "They were victims too," he said. Jean nodded once. Like that mattered more than any power feat. Hank arrived with Logan and Rogue, eyes wide behind glasses. Logan's claws slid out the moment he smelled the air. "What the hell is this?" Logan snarled. Sinister's voice came through speakers again, calm as ever. "A lesson," he said. "For all of you." Clark's head snapped up. "Where are you?" he demanded. Sinister chuckled softly. "Away," he said, "but not gone." The building began to hum. Hank's eyes widened as he scanned. "Self-destruct," he said. "Not a large explosion. A collapse. It will bury everything." "Everyone out," Scott shouted. Clark moved first. He scooped up 2 unconscious captives at once and carried them out at speed. The man in black guided students and teachers through the safest corridor. Kitty phased people through walls when doors jammed. Rogue carried a heavy injured teen like they weighed nothing. Logan lagged behind for 1 second, staring at a table full of notes and samples. He wanted to destroy it. He wanted to kill the man who did it. But Clark's earlier words hit him like a punch. "Don't get bored of being good." Logan snarled and turned away, choosing the living over revenge. They burst outside as the facility collapsed inward like it had been hollowed out. Concrete sank. Metal screamed. Dust rose. Clark hovered above and watched for falling debris, ready to catch anything that threatened the escaping line. The man in black stood beside Scott, cape fluttering, eyes narrowed. Sinister had escaped. Again, Jean pressed fingers to her temple and flinched. Aurora noticed. "Jean?" she asked. Jean stared at the sky like she was listening to something far away. For a second, Jean whispered. "I felt heat, not fire, not anger. Like a sun inside my head." Clark looked at her, serious. "Are you okay?" he asked. Jean swallowed. "I don't know," she admitted. Xavier's voice came through the comm, worried. "Jean, come home," he said, "now." The team regrouped on the edge of the woods. The rescued students were wrapped in blankets. Some cried, some stared, some just held hands and shook. Scott looked at Clark and the man in black with a new kind of understanding. They weren't just visitors anymore. They were now part of the war. Clark stared at the smoking ruins and felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. Sinister had not tried to beat him. Sinister had tried to shape him. The man in black spoke quietly beside him, voice low enough that only Clark heard. "He wanted you to break," he said. Clark's eyes stayed on the ruins. "He failed," Clark said. The man in black's gaze hardened. "He learned," he replied. A soft sound came from a small speaker in the man in black's glove. Sinister's voice, recorded from the lab, played one last time. "Now I know what you are," Sinister had said, almost singing. "Next time I won't fight you. I'll use you." Clark closed his eyes for a second. Then he opened them and looked toward the distant mansion. "We go back," he said. Scott nodded. "We prepare," he answered. And as they moved, the sky above them stayed calm. But it no longer felt like peace. It felt like the pause between plans. Weeks passed, but nobody at the mansion pretended things were normal again. The lawn had been repaired. The broken trees had been cleared. The walls had been reinforced. Yet every night, the students still listened for metal footsteps that were not there. Scott Summers watched all of it like a man guarding a match near dry paper. They trained harder now. In the mornings, Scott ran field drills with the older students and the X-Men. He kept them in lines. He kept their eyes moving. He made them repeat rescue patterns until tired legs became steady legs. Clark joined those drills, but he never acted like a boss. He stood at the edges first. He watched. Then, when someone fell or froze, he stepped in with simple help. "Breathe," he told a shaking teenager once, voice quiet. "Pick one thing to do, just one, then do it." When a student tried to lift a heavy beam during a practice rescue and couldn't, Clark didn't show off. He crouched beside them and said, "Put your hands here, feel the balance. I'll lift with you." He made it feel possible. That mattered more than the weight. At night, Clark did something else that surprised Kitty the first time she saw it. He stood outside the safe room doors during evening drills. Not inside, not in front of the kids like a guard. Just close enough that they could see him through the small windows and remember there was someone outside who would not run away. Kitty heard one little kid whisper, "That's Superman," like it was a prayer. Clark blinked at the word when he heard it. He didn't correct the kid. He also didn't smile. His face softened in a way that looked almost sad. Later, Kitty asked him, "Do you mind when they call you that?" Clark leaned against the hall wall and looked down at his hands. "Back home, people used it like a symbol," he said. "Here, it sounds like a safety blanket." Kitty shrugged. "We need those," she said. Clark nodded once. "Then I don't mind," he replied. The other stranger built safety in a very different way. Batman didn't hover near safe rooms. He built a web around the mansion without asking permission from the trees. Small sensors hidden under rocks, thin wires that ran through the woods, cameras placed where birds wouldn't see them but a trained eye would. Kitty kept finding them. Sometimes she would hold one between two fingers and glare at him. "I found another," she'd say. Batman would look at it, then at her. "Put it back," he'd answer. "Creepy," Kitty would say again. "Effective," Batman would reply. Jean started calling the web the bat nest under her breath. Logan called it worse. Hank McCoy, of course, treated it like homework. One afternoon, Hank marched into the study room with a stack of printed pages and an offended look on his face. Batman was sitting at a desk near the window, typing fast on a laptop that looked too normal for him. Hank slapped the pages down beside it. "Your file headings remain inconsistent," Hank announced. Batman didn't look up. "Go away," he said. Hank ignored that completely. "You labeled one section worst case and another emergency plans, and a third. If everything goes bad," Hank continued, "that is 3 names for the same category. Pick one." Batman's hands paused. Slowly, he turned his head toward Hank. Hank lifted his chin. "I am right," he said, like it was a law of nature. Jean walked in right then, saw the stack, and covered her mouth to hide a laugh. Batman's voice went flat. "You're editing my contingencies," he said. "Only the labels," Hank replied brightly. "I am not a monster." Jean's eyes slid to Batman. "Also," she added, "if you keep calling students assets in your notes, I'm going to break your laptop in my mind." Batman stared at her. Jean stared back. For a second, it was like 2 storms meeting. Then Batman looked away first and typed one new line. Hank leaned in to read it and smiled. "Much better," Hank said. Kitty peeked through the doorway and whispered, "Did Batman just get bullied by a teacher?" Logan, passing behind her, grunted. "Good," he said. "It builds character." Despite the small laughs, fear kept finding new ways into the mansion. The outside world grew louder. A government panel started talking about registration. Reporters stood outside the gates and shouted questions at anyone who walked too close. Trask's name showed up again and again on screens, always paired with the same words: public safety, sentinel funding, necessary measures. Scott wanted to punch the TV every time. Xavier watched those broadcasts with a tired calm that made Scott feel worse. "You can't fight every voice," Xavier told Scott one evening. Scott's visor was off. His eyes looked too exposed without it. "Maybe we should," Scott said. Xavier's gaze stayed gentle. "Then we would become the story they want," he replied. "Angry, dangerous, out of control." Scott clenched his jaw. "We are not out of control," he said. Xavier nodded. "I know," he said quietly. "But they are not listening for truth. They are listening for permission." That same night, Xavier asked Clark and Batman to meet him in his office. Clark came first. He stood near the bookshelf, hands behind his back like a respectful student. Batman stayed near the door, where he could leave fast. Xavier looked from one to the other. "You've both helped," he began. "More than I asked." Clark's eyes softened. "This is what I do," he said. Batman didn't answer. Xavier continued anyway. "But we cannot pretend your presence does not change the temperature of the world," he said. Clark's jaw tightened slightly. "I know," he replied. Xavier folded his hands. "So I will be direct," he said. "I want you to stay, not hidden, not as secrets, as mentors, as allies." Clark's throat tightened. The word "stay" hit him harder than any beam. Batman's gaze narrowed, like he didn't like offers that sounded warm. Xavier looked at Batman next. "And I want you to stop building walls inside my home," he said gently. "If you must plan, plan with us, not around us." Batman's voice was quiet. "I don't share plans," he said. Jean's voice drifted from the hallway, dry and sharp. "That's the problem," she called in. Batman didn't flinch, but his shoulders tightened. Xavier held up one hand. "I am not asking you to give up who you are," he said. "I am asking you to understand who we are." Clark looked down, then up again. "If we stay," he asked, "does that put your students in more danger?" Xavier's answer came fast. "They are in danger already," he said. "But with you here, they also have something they rarely get." Clark's eyes narrowed. "What?" he asked. Xavier's voice softened. "A chance to believe the world can hold power without cruelty," he said. Clark went still. That was the core of him, the thing he had been built for. Batman's gaze stayed hard. "And if the world decides that makes them more afraid?" he asked. Xavier met his eyes without blinking. "Then we face that together," he said. Batman said nothing, but he didn't leave. That was his answer for now. 2 days later, Magneto came again. He didn't come to the trees this time. He came to the edge of a city. A quiet memorial had been set up for the children taken by anti-mutant groups over the years. Names were written on paper. Candles burned in glass jars. People stood and cried. Clark stood there in plain clothes, trying to be invisible. It didn't work. It never worked. Magneto stepped out of the crowd like a blade sliding free. "You should not stand among them," Magneto said calmly, eyes fixed on Clark. "You make them hope too much." Clark's jaw tightened. "Hope is not a crime," he said. Magneto's mouth twitched. "In this world," Magneto replied, "hope often gets you killed." Clark turned fully to face him. "You wanted to talk," he said. "So talk." Magneto gestured toward the candles. "Look," he said. "This is your future here. The world will keep taking. It will keep cutting. It will keep smiling while it does it." Clark's eyes flicked to a child's name written in shaky handwriting. He felt heat behind his eyes and forced it down. Magneto stepped closer. "You have the strength to end it," Magneto said. "Not slowly, not politely. End it." Clark's voice remained steady. "You want me to rule them," he said. "I want you to stop begging." Magneto corrected. "Stop asking wolves to become sheep." Clark's gaze hardened. "If I become a wolf," he said, "then I teach them that fear is right." Magneto's eyes narrowed. "Fear is already right," he said. "They prove it daily." Clark shook his head once. "No," he said. "They prove it's common, not right." Magneto stared at him for a long moment, then spoke again, softer now. "You think you can inspire them," he said. "But inspiration doesn't stop bullets." Clark looked at the candles. "It stops some," he said quietly. "And for the rest, we stop bullets." Magneto's cape shifted with the wind. "You will be tested," he said. "And when you fail to save everyone, they will blame you. They will punish you for being strong." Clark lifted his eyes. "Then I'll keep being strong anyway," he said. Magneto's expression turned sharp again, like he hated how simple that was. "You are stubborn," he said. Clark almost smiled. "So I've been told," he replied. Magneto stepped back into the crowd, then paused. His next words weren't for the crowd. They were for Clark alone. "When they finally push you hard enough," Magneto said, "remember that I offered you a clean answer." Then he vanished like smoke. That night, Clark flew above the mansion, high enough that the air turned thin. He listened for threats the way Xavier listened for pain. He heard cars far away, coyotes in the woods, the steady breathing of sleeping kids behind stone walls. He also heard something else, a faint humming line in the sky, a wrongness that didn't belong. His stomach tightened. Someone was copying the tear again. When he landed, Batman was already waiting in the courtyard, like he had known Clark would come down at that exact moment. "You heard it," Batman said. Clark nodded once. "Yes," he replied. Batman's jaw tightened. "It's happening soon," he said. Clark stared at the dark trees. "Then we don't wait," he replied. Batman's answer was simple. "Agreed," he said. In a hidden place miles away, Mr. Sinister watched a new machine stand up. It wasn't shaped like the old Sentinels. It was sleeker, smaller, denser. Its eyes were not red. They were a pale, calm white. Sinister walked around it like a proud artist. "You are not meant to beat him," Sinister whispered. You are meant to corner him." He tapped a remote. A field flickered around the machine for half a second. Red. Not kryptonite. Not magic weakness. Just a filter that dulled Clark's senses, slowed his perfect control, and made him rely on choice instead of speed. Sinister smiled wider. "And you?" he murmured, looking at the machine's head. "Are meant to punish the shadow as well." He turned to a screen showing the mansion, and Batman's web of sensors mapped out in neat lines. "You plan," Sinister said softly. "How adorable. I plan too." The next morning, Trask announced a public safety demonstration in a nearby city. It was a trap dressed like a press event. Scott knew it the moment he saw it on TV. "We don't go," he said. Aurora looked out the window at the students. "If we don't go, the world sees us hiding," she said. Hank frowned. "If we go, the world sees us as targets," he replied. Jean's eyes narrowed. "They want another clip," she said. "Another reason." Batman watched the broadcast with a still face. "It's bait," he said. Clark looked at the screen and saw the crowd behind the podium. Families, kids on shoulders, people who didn't know they were standing near a match. "We can't not go," Clark said quietly. Scott's jaw tightened. He hated that Clark was right. So they went smart. The X-Men arrived in small groups, not all at once. Storm stayed high above, controlling wind to watch movement. Jean stayed back at a distance, mind open only enough to catch danger spikes. Logan moved through alleys, sniffing for traps. Batman moved like a rumor on rooftops. Clark walked openly through the crowd, because fear was already there, and hiding would only feed it. People pointed. Some cheered. Some screamed. A child ran forward, then stopped, frozen in fear, staring at Clark's face. Clark crouched down and said, "Hey, gentle. Are you lost?" The kid blinked and shook his head. "Are you Superman?" the kid asked, voice small. Clark paused. He felt every camera angle turned toward him. He could have dodged it. He could have joked. He could have lied. He chose the truth that mattered. "I'm someone who helps," Clark said. Then he added, simple and clear, "People call me Superman." The kid's face brightened like someone had turned on a lamp. "Cool," the kid whispered. Clark smiled, quick and real. "Stay with your family," he said. "Okay?" The kid nodded and ran back. On the podium, Trask lifted his hands like a preacher. "Today," Trask said loudly, "we show the world that safety is possible." Clark's eyes narrowed. Scott's voice came through Clark's earpiece. "Something's wrong," Scott said. Clark's hearing sharpened. He heard metal moving under the street. Not a car, not a train. Heavy feet, perfectly synchronized. Then the street split open. Sentinels rose from hidden lifts. Not the old clunky ones. New ones. Faster ones. And behind them, the Prime Machine stepped up like a calm executioner. The crowd screamed and surged. Clark moved first. He shot upward, hovered above the chaos, and shouted, "Everyone down! Move away from the machines! Follow the exits!" He didn't shout like a god. He shouted like a lifeguard who couldn't afford panic. Scott's team hit the line of sentinels. Cyclops fired controlled blasts to push machines away from the densest crowd areas. Storm slammed wind down in thick walls that guided civilians like invisible hallways. Logan dove into a sentinel's joints and tore wires with savage precision. Jean raised a telekinetic shield over a group of trapped families. Batman was already inside the mess, pulling people away from danger before they even understood where danger was coming from. Then the Prime Machine raised its arm. A red field spread outward like a low fog. Clark felt it hit him. His senses dulled at the edges. The world didn't go dark, but it got heavier. He could still move fast, but not with his usual perfect timing. He could still hear, but some sounds went soft, like they were behind glass. Clark's jaw tightened. "Red field," he muttered. Batman's voice came through a private channel. "Don't fight it," Batman said. "Work around it." The Prime Machine didn't aim at Clark. It aimed at the crowd. It fired 3 net pulses, not to kill, but to trap. People were wrapped in glowing bands that tightened when they struggled. Hostages. Clark's chest tightened. Sinister's lesson. Make the hero choose. Clark shot down toward the nearest net. He tore it apart with careful fingers, freeing a woman and 2 kids. The prime machine shifted and fired again, aiming toward the podium where Trask stood. Trask's eyes went wide. The cameras loved it. Trask, the protector, suddenly needing protection. Clark moved to catch the net. Batman intercepted first. He threw a device that burst into a hard foam wall, blocking the net's line long enough for Clark to grab Trask's podium and yank it aside, clearing the space. Trask stumbled back, face pale. Clark stared at him for half a second, anger tight under his skin. Then Clark looked away and kept saving people, because he couldn't afford to waste even 1 second on hate. The prime machine walked forward, calm and steady. It lifted its head toward Jean's shield. A pulse emitted like static made into a weapon. Jean flinched. Her shield cracked at the edges. Scott shouted, "Jean, pull back!" Jean's teeth clenched. "I'm fine," she lied. Clark heard her heart spike. He shot toward her group, took the next pulse on his own body, and felt his skull vibrate with the pressure. Not pain. Pressure. He stayed steady anyway. Jean looked at him, breathing hard. "It's pushing my mind," she whispered. Clark's eyes narrowed. "Then don't hold it alone," he said. He placed himself beside the shield, not touching Jean, but anchoring the space with his presence and speed, intercepting anything that threatened the trapped families. On a rooftop, Batman watched the prime machine's movement patterns. He didn't stare at its strength. He stared at its timing. It was acting like a hunter, always forcing Clark to choose rescue over pursuit, always aiming to exhaust trust. Batman's eyes narrowed. Then he saw it. A small broadcast drone hovering behind the prime machine, sending a live feed somewhere. Batman's jaw tightened. "There," he whispered. He moved. He dropped from the roof into a gap between sentinels and sprinted through the chaos like a shadow sliding under a door. A sentinel swung an arm at him. Logan slammed into the sentinel's elbow from the side, claws in, redirecting the swing away from Batman. "Move, Bat," Logan growled. Batman didn't thank him. He just moved faster. He reached the drone and threw a batarang that sliced it clean in half. The drone fell. Batman caught it mid-drop and crushed the core in his hand. The prime machine's head snapped toward Batman. For the first time, it looked like it cared about him. It lifted one arm and fired a tight beam not at civilians, at Batman. Batman dove behind a concrete barrier. The beam sliced through stone like butter. Batman rolled, barely clearing the next hit. He popped up, threw a small device that stuck to the prime machine's shoulder, and jumped back again. The device didn't explode. It blinked once. Then it started feeding data into Batman's handheld. "Got you," Batman muttered. Clark saw Batman taking direct fire and felt a spike of alarm. He wanted to rush over. Then he heard a child scream to his left. Clark turned and saw a sentinel lifting a bus. The bus was full of people. The metal groaned. The wheels dangled. Clark's stomach dropped. He shot toward it and caught the bus under its center, holding it steady with both hands. The sentinel tried to drop it like a weapon. Clark didn't let it. He lowered it gently, fighting the red field's heaviness with pure will. As the bus touched down, Clark looked up and saw the prime machine stepping back. Retreat. Not because it was losing, because it had already won something else. Clark's eyes widened. "It's leaving," he said under his breath. Batman's voice came through. Sharp. "Let it go," he said. Clark's jaw clenched. "No," he whispered. Then another scream hit closer. Clark turned and saw the hostages in the bands tightening as the net system recalibrated. They were going to crush if left too long. Clark froze for half a heartbeat. He could chase the prime machine. He could try to grab it and stop it and maybe find whoever was controlling it. Or he could save the trapped people right now. Clark's hands opened. He made the choice he always made. He saved the people. He blurred through the net clusters, tearing bands apart with perfect care. He lifted metal beams off trapped legs. He He shielded a family with his own body as a sentinel fell. Batman watched Clark do it and felt something tighten in his chest. Sinister had been right about one thing. Good people were predictable. But Batman also knew something Sinister underestimated. Good people were also stubborn, and that stubbornness could break plans. The Prime machine stepped toward a service tunnel entrance at the edge of the street. Batman sprinted after it because Batman didn't have to make Clark's choice. He could chase so Clark didn't have to. The Prime machine turned and fired again. Batman slid under the beam, rolled, and slapped another device onto the machine's ankle as he passed. A tracking tag. Not perfect, not guaranteed, but a thread. Then a sentinel dropped between Batman and the Prime machine like a wall. Batman stopped short, eyes hard. Behind the sentinel wall, the Prime machine vanished into the tunnel. Batman exhaled once, angry. "Shadow friend," Sinister's voice purred in Batman's earpiece. Batman froze. That channel was private. His jaw tightened. "How?" he began. Sinister chuckled softly. "You carry your secrets like medals," Sinister said. "I admire it." Batman's voice stayed flat. "Show yourself," he said. "Oh, I'm busy," Sinister replied warmly. "But I want to congratulate you." Batman's grip tightened on a batarang. "For what?" Batman asked. "For building such a lovely little web," Sinister answered. "I plucked a strand earlier. It sang." Batman's blood ran cold. The mansion. Batman's eyes snapped to his wrist screen. His feed flashed red. Alert. Mansion perimeter breach. Batman's throat tightened. "No," he whispered. Clark heard the whisper even over the chaos. He turned his head. "What?" he demanded. Batman didn't answer. He threw a smoke pellet, vanished into it, and ran. Clark saw the shift in Batman's body and knew something worse was happening somewhere else. Clark shot upward, scanning, hearing, listening across miles. And then he heard it. A distant alarm at the mansion. A child crying. A sharp metallic step on stone. Clark's chest tightened like someone had grabbed his heart. He vanished from the city in a sonic blur. Scott saw him go and swore. "We need to wrap this up," Scott snapped. "Now." Storm slammed lightning into the last sentinel's chest, blowing it apart. Logan tore through another. Rogue landed from above, grabbed a machine's head, and ripped it sideways with a growl. Within minutes, the remaining sentinels pulled back. Not fully destroyed. Withdrawn. They weren't trying to win the city anymore. They had already moved the real fight. Back at the mansion, everything was happening too fast. The perimeter sensors Batman had placed were still there. They had triggered, which meant the breach wasn't invisible. It was bold. A new Prime unit stepped onto the mansion grounds like it owned the land. It wasn't the same one from the city. This one moved differently. Its body shimmered in small waves, like it could almost slip through the world. Kitty felt her stomach drop. It had phasing interference built into it. Jean stood in the main hall, hands raised, eyes focused, trying to sense minds outside. There were no minds, just cold machine presence. Then a voice filled the mansion speakers. "Sinister." "Good evening, my dear children," Sinister said, sweet as honey. "I do apologize for the mess." Xavier's face stayed calm, but his eyes hardened. "Sinister," he said quietly. Jean's breath caught. "He's here," she whispered. Xavier shook his head. "Not physically," he said. "He's too careful." The new Prime unit reached the front doors. Its hand lifted. The doors blew inward. Students screamed. Teachers pulled them back. And then Clark arrived. He hit the front lawn like a meteor that chose mercy. Dirt blasted outward. The air shook. He stood up slowly, eyes locked on the Prime unit. The red field washed over him again. Stronger this time. Clark's senses dulled at the edges. He didn't care. He stepped forward anyway. "Stop," Clark said, voice low and dangerous. The Prime unit lifted its head. It spoke in a calm machine tone. "Anomaly secondary confirmed." Clark's eyes narrowed. "I'm not an anomaly," he said. "I'm a person." It attacked. Fast. It didn't try to trade punches. It tried to slip past him. Toward the house. Clark moved to block. The unit shifted phase for half a second, slipping through Clark's reach like smoke through fingers. Clark's eyes widened. "Kitty," he muttered, understanding. It wasn't Kitty-level phasing, not clean and full, just enough to cheat. Clark pivoted, grabbed the unit's shoulder the moment it solidified, and slammed it into the ground. The ground cracked. The unit rose again, unbothered, and fired a pulse toward the mansion windows. Clark stepped into it and took it on his chest. Then the unit fired again toward a different window, then again toward the safe room entrance. It was doing the same thing, forcing choices. Clark's jaw clenched. "No," he growled. Inside the mansion, Batman appeared in the hall like a shadow made real. Jean flinched when she sensed him not in her mind, but in her instincts. Batman's eyes were hard. "He got inside the web," Batman said to Xavier. Xavier's voice stayed calm. "Then we adjust," he replied. Batman's jaw tightened. "This is on me," he said. Xavier looked at him gently. "This is on hate," Xavier corrected. Batman didn't respond to that. He moved. He opened his handheld and saw the tag feed he had placed earlier in the city. Signal. Weak, but present. He was tracking the machine in the broadcast chain. A location pinged, flashing briefly before it tried to vanish again. Batman's eyes narrowed. "Got you," he muttered. Outside, Clark was still saving the house by force of will. He moved faster than the machine could fully predict, even under the red field. He intercepted pulses, redirected debris, and used heat vision in thin, precise cuts to disable the unit's arm joints without blasting the mansion behind it. Scott and Storm arrived seconds later, landing on the lawn like reinforcements in a war movie. Storm's wind slammed into the unit, pinning it long enough for Scott to fire a full optic blast that tore off half its shoulder. The unit staggered. It didn't fall. Jean stepped out onto the porch, eyes blazing with focus, and pushed with telekinesis. The unit's body flexed, like it had learned how to resist her pressure. Jean's teeth clenched. "It's adjusted to me," she whispered. Clark glanced back at the students peeking through hall windows. He couldn't let fear live here. He surged forward and hit the unit with a punch that finally moved it, really moved it, launching it across the lawn and into the tree line. It crashed through trunks like they were sticks. Clark didn't chase blindly. He hovered, listened, and then dropped straight down again, pinning the unit under both hands. "Stay down," Clark said, voice tight. The unit's body flickered. It tried to phase again. Kitty ran in, panting, hands lifted. "I can disrupt it," she said. Batman's voice cut through the calm. "Don't," he said. Everyone froze for half a heartbeat. Batman sounded urgent. "It's using your timing," Batman said. "If you lock into it, it learns faster." Kitty swallowed. "Then what?" she snapped. Batman didn't answer her. He answered Clark. "Break the control chain," Batman said. "Not the body." Clark's eyes narrowed. "Where?" he demanded. Batman spoke fast. "I got a ping," he said. "A broadcast relay. Off-site. If Sinister is running this through a control system, it's there." Scott's voice tightened. "We can't split," he said. Clark looked at the house again. He looked at the students. He looked at the prime unit under his hands. Then he looked at Batman in the doorway. Clark's voice turned quiet. "If I leave, it hits the house again," he said. Batman's answer was simple. "Then I go," he said. Clark shook his head. "It's a trap," Clark said. Batman's eyes stayed hard. "Everything is," he replied. "I'm still going." Jean stepped forward, breathing hard. "I can come," she said. "If he tries." Batman snapped his gaze to her. "No telepath link," he said. "If he's monitoring channels, he'll ride your mind." Jean's jaw clenched. She hated that it made sense. Logan stepped up. "Then I go with him," Logan growled. Batman didn't argue. He just moved. Within seconds, Batman and Logan vanished into the tree line, heading toward the relay ping. Storm kept wind on the unit. Scott kept blast pressure ready. Jean kept a shield on the porch. Kitty moved civilians inside deeper. Clark stayed on top of the prime unit like a lid on a boiling pot. Sinister's voice returned, almost amused. "You are so busy saving." Sinister cooed through the speakers. "It's adorable." Clark's eyes burned. "You're a coward," Clark said. Sinister laughed softly. "No," he replied. "I am a survivor." Clark's voice turned sharp. "And what are you trying to survive?" he demanded. Sinister's answer was calm. "A world where someone like you decides he is tired," he said. Clark went still, because Sinister had found the fear under Clark's strength. Not fear of death. Fear of becoming the thing everyone said he was. Clark's voice stayed low. "You don't get to define me," he said. Sinister sighed dramatically. "No," he said. "You define yourself. That's why this is fun." The prime unit suddenly stopped struggling. Its eyes blinked once. Then it emitted a pulse straight into the mansion wall. Not a blast to break stone. A signal. Inside, a small device in one of Batman's sensors detonated with a sharp pop. Smoke filled a hallway. Kids screamed. Clark's chest tightened. Sinister had done it. He had turned Batman's web into a weapon. Clark's grip tightened on the unit's head. His eyes flashed red. Then he stopped. He didn't burn the machine's face off. He didn't let anger choose for him. He lifted the unit, flew it away from the mansion in a straight line, and slammed it into an empty field miles away, far enough that even a sudden explosion wouldn't hit anyone. Then he shot back to the mansion in a blur, landing inside the smoky hallway. Students were coughing. Teachers were shouting directions. Clark moved through smoke like it wasn't there. He grabbed small hands and guided kids out, voice steady. "Follow my voice," he said. "You're okay. Keep moving." Jean saw him doing it and felt something loosen inside her chest. This was what Xavier meant. Power without cruelty. Outside, a soft beep came from Batman's wrist feed. A message. One word. Now. Batman and Logan had found the relay. It was a small bunker disguised under an old service building. Inside, machines hummed and screens flashed. A control chair sat in the center like a throne. But Sinister wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. Instead, a smaller prime unit stood guard, built for close combat, fast and brutal. Logan didn't wait. He lunged. The unit met him with a shock pulse that made Logan's muscles seize for half a second. Logan snarled and pushed through it anyway, claws tearing metal. Batman slid past Logan, ignoring the fight to hit the control system. He planted an EMP device, then yanked open a panel and cut wires with a tool. The screens flickered. The relay signal stuttered. Outside of the mansion, the prime unit on the field froze for half a second, like someone had tugged its leash. Clark felt it immediately. "They did it," he whispered. Batman's voice came through, tight. "Relay down," he said. "But he's gone." Logan's growl came in the background. "Tell me where," Logan snarled. Batman didn't answer, because the bunker was already collapsing under its own self-destruct. Sinister had built everything with an exit plan. Always. Clark closed his eyes for 1 second as if he could will Sinister to appear. Then he opened them and made the only choice that mattered again. He returned to the students and kept them safe. When it was over, the mansion still stood. No kids were taken. No safe rooms were breached. But Sinister had escaped. Again. Scott stood on the lawn with his visor off, face pale with anger and exhaustion. Xavier rolled beside him, looking out at the damage and the shaken teachers. Clark stood near the steps, hands at his sides, breathing slow. Batman returned near dawn, cape torn at the edge, jaw tight. Jean watched him enter and said quietly, "I felt the smoke. I thought we lost someone." Batman didn't look at her. "We didn't," he replied. Jean took 1 step closer. "And your web?" she asked. Batman's voice was rough. "It won't happen again," he said. Hank, somehow still trying to be Hank, held up a clipboard. "I have updated your contingency labels to include tampering risk," he announced. Batman stared at him. Hank added, "You're welcome." For the first time, Batman looked like he might actually throw the clipboard. He didn't. Instead, he took it, read the header, and sighed once through his nose like a man losing a private war. Xavier watched the whole thing and said softly, "Progress," like it was a prayer. Later that day, the city news ran a different kind of clip. Not just the machines, the rescues. A man in blue carrying a child out of smoke. A woman with white hair guiding wind-like hands. A man with a visor pulling a bus away from falling steel. And, in the background, a shadow moving through the crowd, pulling people to safety without asking for applause. Rumors spread fast. Some called Clark a demon. Some called him a saint. Kids called him Superman, like it was the easiest name in the world. The bat-masked man didn't get a name from the crowd. He got a whisper. Batman. It fit like a warning sign. It also fit like a promise. That night, Xavier sat with Clark again in the quiet of his office. "You made the same choice every time," Xavier said. Clark looked tired now. Not physically. Something deeper. "I did," he said. Xavier's voice was gentle. "Do you regret it?" he asked. Clark shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "But I understand the trap better now." Xavier nodded. "Good," he said. "Understanding does not mean surrender." Clark's eyes lifted. "I don't want to stay forever," he admitted. "But I can't leave while this is happening." Xavier's gaze softened. "Then we have a new status quo," he said. Clark exhaled. "I stay," he said. Xavier nodded once. "And you do not stay alone," he replied. In a far place, Sinister watched the broadcasts with a calm smile. He set a glass down on a clean table and hummed to himself. "You did wonderfully," he whispered, to nobody in the room. Then he tapped a new file open. It was labeled in neat, corrected lettering. Hope response patterns. Somewhere else, Magneto sat at a chessboard and moved one piece forward. Not a king. A pawn. Slow. Patient. The game was still young. The next evening was quiet enough that it felt strange. The mansion lights glowed warm against the dark trees. Snow didn't fall. Rain didn't rise. The air was still. Clark walked the hallway after dinner, listening to normal sounds. A door closing gently. A laugh. A teacher reminding someone to brush their teeth. He stopped near one of the smaller common rooms and saw a student sitting alone with a book they weren't reading. The student looked up when Clark entered, eyes wary but curious. "Hey," Clark said softly. "You okay?" The student hesitated, then shrugged. "I guess," they said. Clark sat on a chair across from them, careful not to take up too much space. "That didn't sound like 'I guess,'" he said. The student picked at the edge of the book cover. "Do you ever get tired?" they asked suddenly. Clark blinked. "Tired?" he repeated. "Tired of people being scared of you," the student said. The words came out fast, like they had been waiting behind teeth all day. "Tired of saving them and then they still hate you." Clark went still. He didn't answer fast. He didn't fake a smile. He treated the question like it deserved truth. "Yes," he said. "Sometimes." The student's eyes widened, like they hadn't expected honesty. Clark leaned forward slightly. "But then I remember something," he continued. "What?" the student asked. Clark nodded toward the hallway. "You," he said, "and the other kids here. You don't get to quit being yourselves because the world is scared. So I don't get to quit being me." The students stared at him for a long moment. Then they whispered, "That's not fair." Clark nodded. "It's not." He agreed. The student swallowed. "So what do you do?" they asked. Clark's voice was quiet. "I keep choosing," he said, "every time." Later, on the roof, Batman stood alone. The moonlight hit the edge of his cape. The wind barely moved. He held a small device in his hand, screen glowing. A file was open. Risk notes. Jean Grey telepathic contact. His cursor blinked at the end of a sentence he had started writing. He stared at it for a long time. Then he deleted the line. Behind him, a soft footstep. Jean. Batman didn't turn. Jean didn't push into his mind. She didn't try. She stayed at the edge of his space. "You erased something," she said. Batman's voice was flat. "Don't start," he replied. Jean crossed her arms. I'm not starting, she said. I'm noticing. Batman finally turned his head slightly, enough to see her with one eye. You shouldn't be up here, he said. Jean shrugged. Neither should you, she replied. Batman's gaze sharpened. You're still hearing too much, he said. Jean's jaw tightened. And you're still planning too much, she shot back. Batman looked away again. The city lights in the distance flickered like tiny fires. Jean's voice softened, just a little. You were scared you'd become a cage, she said. Batman's shoulders tightened. Jean continued anyway. And I'm scared you'll be too late, she added. We're both scared. You just hide it better. Batman didn't deny it. After a long silence, he said one sentence, low and honest. I don't trust myself to be lucky, he said. Jean's expression shifted. Not anger, understanding. I don't trust the world to be kind, she replied. Batman nodded once, like that was the closest thing to agreement they would ever have. Downstairs, Xavier sat in his chair by a window, hands folded, listening to the mansion breathe. Clark stood beside him, looking out at the trees. We're still here, Clark said quietly, like he was surprised. Xavier's voice was gentle. Yes, he replied, and the world is still turning. Clark's eyes narrowed. Sinister will come again, he said. Xavier nodded. He will, he agreed. So will others. Clark took a slow breath. Then we keep the lights on, he said. Xavier smiled softly. Yes, he replied. We keep the lights on. Outside, the mansion glowed in the dark like a safe island. Not because the world was safe, because someone chose, again and again, to make a place where fear didn't get the last word.